Hey, Erik, we recently got an email from a fan.
Ooh, from a fan?
Yeah. Is it okay if I read it to you?
Yes, do.
All right. Dear Erik and Emil, what are you lazy Swedish fuckers doing up there? I mean, come on. You used to release an episode every week, and now it's like, what, a couple of them per year? What are you guys doing?
Well, at least he's polite. I love that he's starting with Dear Erik and Emil. Well, what we're doing is actually we're basing the podcast process on our values, which we didn't used to do.
It sounds like shitty values, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see that. But now we're having a lot more fun. We feel a lot more motivated to do the podcast episodes in this way and feeling a lot more proud of them.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a good match because today we're talking about values. And to be honest, I wish I knew the stuff we're talking about in this episode when I was younger. It would have saved me from so much pain and headache and suffering.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this because the things we will be talking about today, I haven't heard anyone else talk about values that way.
Me neither. So what can someone expect to learn from today's episode?
Yeah, so for you listening, today we will talk about values and you will learn how everyone has values that we aren't even aware of. And those values are secretly running our lives and they make us take decisions or take actions or even not take actions without us even being aware of it happening.
And by understanding your values, you will be able to create a lot of meaning in your everyday life. You will have more energy, you will feel more excited, and have lots of motivation. All of this you will learn today.
And before we jump into it, one of our top values is to bring value. So make sure that you click the subscribe button because you don't want to miss the future valuable episodes that we will be recording. If I turn off that anxiety and try to ignore it, I'm going to do the same mistake again. But if I listen to that feeling, it's going to teach me like, hey, Erik, it's time to get more aligned with who you want to be.
That would be an excellent use of that anxiety. And if you wake up and have anxiety and the first thing you do is to scroll your phone to get a dopamine kick, then you miss the important information that anxiety has to give you. And today I'm here with, in the studio, as always, my good friend Erik Bergman. Erik made over $50 million before he turned 30 when he founded his previous company, Catena Media, that went from 0 to 300 employees in just 5 years. And on the side of great, he's also teaching personal development and entrepreneurship to his over 1 million followers in social media. Pleasure to being here today with you.
Happy to be here. And I'm here, as always, with my good friend Emil, who I've known for over 15 years now, I think. And he's among the smartest people that I have ever met. And I just love learning things with him because he's obsessed with personal development and values and everything that makes your life better. And he was one of the first people joining me in Great a few years ago. And now he's running a personal development and coaching business on the side of Great. I'm excited to talk about values with you today.
I'm excited as well. And if you're new here, this is the becominggreat.com podcast. And our goal is to be the podcast in the world that gives you the most value per minute out of any podcast within personal development and entrepreneurship. And we plan to accomplish this by spending a lot of time researching and preparing each episode so we don't tell any pointless stories or waste your time. You might also notice that we don't have any commercials here. We think it's kind of annoying with commercials in podcasts. So the next time you listen to another podcast, you get annoyed by a commercial, think of us and our goal to give you the most value per minute out of any podcast. And with that said, let's take a look at today's topics. Today's episode is divided into 5 topics. In the first one, we talk about how values are born. And you will learn why you can't just take a list of cool sounding values from a leadership book like bravery or honesty or philanthropy. No, values needs to be lived because they are born from emotional experiences. And unless you have those experiences, your values are not going to matter so much.
And in the second topic, we will talk about how values fail us. Because a lot of our values that we have, we are not even aware of, and they are making our lives worse. So here you will learn how to understand what values you have and how to see if they're making your lives better or worse and how to change them if they're not good.
In topic 3, we talk about how to find better values. And this is important because if your values are doing a good job, your life is going to feel great. But if you have bad values or you don't even know your values, your life is likely going to feel confusing, empty, and meaningless.
And in the fourth topic, we will talk about how the values guide you, because the values are like an internal compass and it works with emotions. So if you ignore your emotions or you're not good at feeling your emotions, this internal compass is not going to work.
Topic 5 is about how we, Erik and Emil, found our top values. And you definitely want to make sure you stay all the way to topic 5, because there we will reveal what we think are the best values that you can choose to live a great life.
And for you listening, if you want more energy, more meaning, and better relationships in your life, make sure you click the subscribe button, because we have put into over 100 hours into this episode to make sure that you get the most value per minute. And we will do that with the future episodes as well, so you don't want to miss them. I'm 14 years old when this happens, and I was really late to hit puberty. So every time I was in a locker room, I was feeling ashamed. And I remember one time after football, after a practice, and I was standing in the shower and I was just looking around, and I realized like, I have the smallest dick in our team. And I remember like turning a little bit towards the wall, like shielding myself a little bit with my hand to kind of cover myself. And the other guys in school and in my football team used to make fun of me for having a small dick. And most of the time it was just friendly banter. Not that big of a deal, even if it hurts, but I pretended that it didn't. But there were once I realized that some of my friends had spoke behind my back. I was in school, and like prettiest girls in school came up to me in front of my friends and said like, "Hey, Erik." I'm like, "Hey, I've heard that you had the smallest dick in school. Is that true?" And my friends were just laughing, and I just wanted to disappear. And I've been trying to like erase this memory, but it's still there. But let's fast forward a bit in time, like a year and a half later. I'm 15 years old and I've finally hit puberty, and I'm still insecure about my dick, but it's significantly bigger than it used to be. It's a prouder penis these days. And I have just started dating this 17-year-old girl who used to go to our school and was this popular, beautiful girl, but now she was too old for our school. So everyone knew who she was. And a few weeks into this relationship, she was the first one that I had sex with. And the day after that, we had gym class again in school. And I remember sitting in the locker room and I was telling my friends about what had happened. And none of them had sex before. So now they were like so impressed and like so excited and asked so many questions, and they were so jealous. And ironically, like that experience in the locker room was much, much better than the like first sex time part.
Wow. How did you feel? Like everyone attention is on you and like you're the hero.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, the same guys who used to mock me and make fun of me in that very place, like in that locker room, was now treating me like a king. So it was this like huge shift. And
wow. So why are you telling the story?
Because I want to brag about sex. No.
First and only time.
First and only time, exactly. I'm telling this story because here a value was being born in me, a value about sex. And today's topic is about values. So I want to dive into how the value was born here and how it impacted my life.
So you had a strong emotional experience here. What value do you think was born out of this?
So the value of having sex will make my life better.
Isn't that a value that everybody's got to some extent?
So I think it's a value that everybody's got to some extent, but it's different how strong that value is with everyone. For me, that was a very clear sign that this is going to make a huge difference in my quality of life, from being the wimp to being the cool guy. So yeah, I think everyone has that value, but how strong that value is, well, everybody doesn't have it, but lots of people have it. And how strong that is the important part.
So what do you mean by a value is being born?
Okay, so let's look at the definition of values that we landed on when we planned this episode. And it is that values are born from emotional experience and tries to guide us to a better life. So if we start by looking at the first half of this definition, values are born from emotional experience. That's what happens here, that once we have a strong emotional experience, that's either good or bad, it will create a value in us that either makes us want to go towards similar experiences and go away from similar experiences based on if it was a good or a bad thing.
Okay, so values are born out of emotional experiences and they try to guide us towards a better life. So the part about them being born, does that mean that we can't choose our values?
Yes, in short, it means that we can't choose our values. We'll dive into this a bit deeper because you kind of can choose them, but you can't take a list of values and just decide this is what I want to do and this is what I'm going to do, because you need that emotional experience that actually tells your body that this is the right or the wrong thing.
Yeah, I think it's a common misunderstanding that you can just take a list from a leadership book and take some of them that sounds good and then now that's your values. It doesn't really work like that. But if you can't choose your values, how can you even know which values you have?
So I don't think most people knows what values they have. I think everybody have values, but few have spent some time thinking about them or understanding them. And for example, in this story, I had no idea that one of my strongest values at the time was if you have more sex, your life will be better.
Yeah. So I guess many of us runs around with a lot of values that are like affecting a lot of important life decisions, but we have no idea that we even have them.
Yeah, and this is where it gets complicated. If we take the definition again, values are born from emotional experience and tries to guide us to a better life. So let's look at the second part here. Values tries to guide us to a better life, because this is where it gets complicated. The values are impacting our thoughts and our feelings. And in that way, they're trying to steer you in different directions. And if you don't know what your values are, you're going to get a lot of emotions in different situations that you don't understand. And you might run from them or you might listen to them. But if you don't understand them, it's going to be complicated.
Right. So maybe in your case, you had a lot of thoughts and feelings guiding you to go to a party where you could meet women instead of staying at home reading a book.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things that could happen. Like, where would be the most likely that I would have sex? And I would make decisions towards that decision. Well, to take actions towards that decision. Partying instead of reading, which could happen a lot.
Yeah, and it's not a conscious choice. It just kind of happens to you.
Yeah, I mean, it is a conscious choice, but it's based on thoughts and feelings that comes based from a previous experience. Right. If I wouldn't have had that previous experience, then maybe I wouldn't make that conscious choice.
Got it. So values are born from emotional experiences and they try to guide you towards a better life. Does that mean that we're just going to run our whole lives with bad values that secretly make decisions for us then?
Well, either that's going to happen, and it happens in a lot of cases that we stay with bad values for a very long time, or you will have a bad value until that value fails. And that can be brutal.
Fail? How does that happen?
Well, let's look at that in topic 2. So I'm sitting in this cafe with my friend, and we're talking about Tinder. And it turns out that he has 3 different Tinder accounts.
3 accounts?
Yeah, 3 accounts.
Not more?
Yeah, not more. He has 3 accounts. Like one where he is like this surfer dude. He's on the beach, walking around barefoot. One where he is, in all the pictures, he's this like business dude and like showing his watch and stuff. And one where he's with like just animals, like he and dogs and cats. And he shows me his phone and he's talking with so many different women. So apparently like works really well. He could pick up girls regardless that what they like.
And I guess he's passionate. Like he's really into it.
Yeah. And he had just come back from a trip to Barcelona. And he had been meeting different women every day. And he said this with this like big smile on his face. And I just got so jealous of him. I mean, I pretended to be happy for him, but it's like, oh, I want that. This was in 2015. So it's long after the stories I told before, but this value was still in here. So when he told me these stories, I felt like, ooh, if I only had more sex, then I would be happy. Because I wasn't very happy at this time in my life. And there were some different things in my life not going well. But one thing in particular that was bothering me was that my sex life wasn't that exciting. I had been with my girlfriend then for 5 years. And yeah, sex just got a little bit more dull every year. And every time a situation like this happened with my friend, or it could be enough that I just saw some picture with like Dan Bilzerian and a bunch of beautiful women on Instagram, that kind of thought was triggered in me. Like, if I only had more sex, then I would be happy. Like that was the solution. And I got these feelings that I was being held captive in my relationship, that she was the reason that I wasn't happy because she was the reason I didn't live like Dan Bilzerian or like my friend with 3 Tinder accounts. So that built like a distance between us that I didn't really know how to deal with. And yeah, I just kept thinking and kept feeling like if I only have more sex, then I'll be happy.
Okay, so at this point, your life didn't feel that great. And at the same time, you have a value inside of you, probably from that day in the locker room where you got to be a hero. And then small times after that, telling you that, go and get more sex. That will make us feel better. So, or was that what the value tried to make you do?
Yes, I think this value inside of me wanted me to break up because the value believed that that was the answer. And I was like madly in love with her. There were so many great things about our relationship. We had so much fun together. Like no one could make me laugh like her. We shared the same sense of humor. No one like listened to me and understood me in the way that she did. Like I could talk to her about anything. Like she was my best friend. And like, no offense to you, but she didn't even come close. So there were so many like connection points with her, and I knew that this woman would be a great mother to my future children if I stayed with her. And still there was that nagging feeling inside me, and it kept coming back. Like every time I was in a situation where I maybe ended up in a little bit flirty situation with a woman, I felt like, oh, if I only did this, life would be better. Or if some other friend told me some other Tinder story or one night stand or whatever, I felt same feeling kept coming back. Like I could see like that's the answer to the problem, but I'm not doing it. And I really wanted to be with her. And still I was like being torn apart from the inside. And this kept going on for like 2 more years or something like that. And sex didn't get better and life didn't really get better. And we ended up breaking up, and sex was the only reason for this. And I was devastated. So I felt like I can't find a solution to whatever is going on within me, and I didn't understand that these were values. I didn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I just felt like life isn't good. And I cried so much, and I was just on my couch for a long time and felt like lonely and didn't really know what to do. And at the time, I felt like I can't stay in this relationship because it doesn't get better. And I don't want to be outside of the relationship because I miss her. So no matter what I did, it was just blank darkness.
So hard being stuck in between those two bad options.
Yeah.
But you took the step out of the relationships. You're crying on the couch, you're devastated. But at least now you can live out this value, right? So what did you do from there?
Yeah, so it took me a while to recover some energy. I don't know, a month or so. And then I decided to, okay, I at least want to explore what would my life be if there were no sexual boundaries in captivity. So have you read the book The Game?
Mm-hmm. The book about pickup and how to attract women.
So it's a book I read in my teenage years about some guy that becomes a master in picking up women by joining some secret society and stuff like that. So I tracked down one of the guys from this book who is one of the main characters in the book, and I paid him to teach me. Yeah, so I went to Los Angeles. He was living there, and I paid to hang out with him and his pickup friends for, I don't know, 4 days or something like that. And it was really interesting to meet these guys. And I went there feeling like, okay, they can be the kind of heroes that teach me to be happy because they live the life that I believe is the answer. And first day I see them around women and in bars and on the street, and they manage to really captivate the attention of anyone they're talking to. There's such presence. There's something magical and sparkly about them. But what was even more interesting was when we were talking, when there were no women around, these guys just felt miserable. It's I was expecting them to be happy and full of life, and they were in really dark places. One of the guys, he was living with his ex-wife and their kid, and she didn't want to be in a relationship with him. She just wanted to live here because he paid the rent. So she didn't really talk to him, and it was clear that he was miserable about this. And another guy, he was still madly in love with his ex-girlfriend, and she didn't want to talk to him either. And a third one, all he could talk about was sex and women, but he felt like he hated women. It's he talked about them like they were some kind of filthy animals that you should just use and destroy. It felt like he wanted to hurt them. And me just sitting there, listening to these stories, feeling their energy, I felt that my hope from these guys being the heroes kind of teaching me how to live was just shrinking. These guys are living the life that I've been dreaming about for years, and it's just dark. They're not happy at all. I don't know, it starts bubbling up confusion. What is the answer? What is this? What is that? And I hang out with these guys for a few days, and I learned some tricks and whatever, but I didn't leave that weekend with a good feeling in my stomach or a conviction that this is going to work. Quite the opposite. But I ended up staying in Los Angeles for a few more months. I picked up salsa dancing, and I was out pretty much every day. I met quite a lot of women, and some of them I had sex with, but I didn't really feel anything. I was just numb, and I don't know how much of that was that I was still madly in love with Johanna and I was just feeling lonely, or how much was that, okay, sex is actually not really the answer to all problems that I had kind of thought.
Okay, so values are born out of emotional experiences and they try to guide us towards a better life. So in this story, your value was born maybe in that locker room, and then it got reinforced later by every time you were exposed to the idea that dating women and having more sex would make your life better. And your value is trying to guide you by giving you a lot of feelings and thoughts to change your life for the better. So you finally build up the courage, or the suffering becomes so unbearable that you choose to leave the relationship you're happy with only for the reason of sex. And then you jump on a plane to Los Angeles, probably crying in the seat, and but still you're hopeful because you're going there now. You're going to meet these heroes that you feel still like your value, feel a deep conviction that they will make your life better. But when you come there and you're exposed to the reality, you realize that this is not going to make my life better at all. Your value is failing you because it's obvious that this is not going to make your life better at all. Your value has failed. And when it failed, I guess you changed your behavior and tried something else.
Well, at first I stayed in Los Angeles and I tried a bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to. So just seeing these guys and knowing that, okay, they have everything that I need or that I want, but they're not happy, that was enough to like shake my value and my understanding. But I still wanted to deny it to myself.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want my conviction to be wrong, because then what would I do?
Yeah. Then you've been wrong your whole life and you broke up with your
and
girlfriend.
I didn't have
for
another answer.
The wrong
I
reason.
didn't, I mean, like, so I stayed on that course anyway, and I found out somewhat for myself. But if I wouldn't have had that first experience with seeing these guys, then maybe I would have thought, yeah, but if I only have sex with even more women, I will be happy.
Yeah.
Now it was like, it was enough to meet a few and like, okay, I feel absolutely nothing here. So I think...
So in a way, they really helped you by showing you that, okay, this value is not working for me.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most important experiences that I've had in my life, meeting them and seeing this.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So afterwards then, your value has failed you big time. You're left in sadness and maybe even more confusion, and you feel lost, I guess. So what did you do from there?
For a pretty long time, I just stayed lost and confused. I had no motivation to really do anything. I didn't really know what the next step would be. So I watched a lot of Netflix and just stayed in. At some point, I realized that, okay, I need to do things. I need to try different stuff, whatever that might be. So I started searching, and I didn't realize that I didn't really think about values at all right now. So I didn't realize that what I was doing was basically searching for new values. I searched for new things to do.
Right. So you're looking for new values. What can someone do to find new and better values?
Yeah, let's look at that in topic 3.
All right.
Okay, so you are a professional coach, and I know that values is one of the key things that you focus on when you are helping clients. So let's say that I would have come to you after Los Angeles and telling you that I was feeling lost. What would you tell me?
So let's take a look at the life cycle of a value. It consists of 4 steps. And like you said before, values are born out of emotional experiences. And this is the first step in the life cycle of a value. This happened strongly to you, both when you got teased as a kid before you hit puberty. It happened in the locker room when you got celebrated as a hero for having sex with this beautiful older lady.
Good times.
Yeah, it probably happened in smaller degrees as well after that, when you saw your friend's Tinder account, when you saw sex on TV. And this creates a value. That's the first step. And then this value is trying to guide you towards a better life. That is step 2. The value is guiding you. And as long as you're having the experience that your life is getting better, then this value will continue to guide you. And step 2 will just continue forever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
Okay, so that's what happens, for example, if I went out partying instead of reading a book. That's
Exactly.
the value guiding me. And if that evening is a good evening and it turns out better for my life, I will continue to use that as a value that guides me.
Exactly. Right. And if it doesn't make your life worse and it continues to improve your life, then you might do it until the day that you die.
Yeah.
Right. So the third step in the value cycle is only happening if our values are making our life worse. And that is when values fail. And you experienced a very strong fail in Los Angeles. You're getting there, you're full of hope, you're convinced that, okay, this is going to make my life better. And then, bam, it makes your life worse. And now your value system starts to fail you.
Okay.
Yeah. And after that, you move on to step 4, which is feeling lost and confused. And the stronger and more intensely the value fail in step 3, the stronger the feeling of being lost and confused is going to be. And in your case, understandably, you felt very lost when a strong value failed, and it failed big.
Okay, so when a value failed, do I always end up feeling lost and confused?
Not necessarily. I mean, we can have smaller values that fail us all the time. And they're so small that they don't put us into this life crisis type of confusion.
Okay, so the reason why I got so lost and confused was like my main guiding principle took me to Los Angeles, and then that was taken away from me, and I got lost and confused. But if there would have been a smaller value failing me, I wouldn't have noticed, really.
Could be, yeah. Could I give an example?
Yeah, sure. What's a smaller value?
Okay, so imagine that I am in a sandbox and I'm playing with a bunch of other kids.
Okay.
Right? And I have...
You're a kid right now.
No, this is last week. No, let's say I'm 2 years old and I'm in this sandbox with a bunch of other kids and I have a really nice, shiny fire truck, right?
Ooh.
The one that makes noises and everything, like bright red. And then another kid, maybe his name is Erik, comes and says, "Hey, can I play with your fire truck?" And I tell Erik, "No!
Why would
Fuck
you do
off.
that?
This is my fire truck, right? You can look at it with jealousy, but you can't play with my fire truck. This is mine."
Okay.
Right? And the result is that I get to spend more time with my fire truck.
Yeah.
This is great. I'm having more fun and there are no consequences.
Yeah.
Right? But as you can imagine, maybe over time, what could happen?
Well, you get very lonely because you just have your fire truck and you don't have me.
Exactly. So this kid would end up without friends, so here the value starts to fail. And
what value is being created?
Maybe sharing is bad, or keeping stuff for myself is making my life better.
Okay.
But then for most kids, they learn quick and realize that, okay, if I share my fire truck, it will actually make my life better because now I have more friends.
Okay.
So the value is shifting, but it doesn't create this huge stage of confusion.
No, so the kid would learn this fairly early on. Like if I share, people have fun together, I actually get a better experience from sharing the fire truck than keeping the fire truck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And worst case would be that the kid never learned this and keeps on just
never wants to share anything.
And struggles to keep friends as an adult.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Okay, but here he probably shifts his values, or you probably shifted your values at 2 years old or 3 years old, 4 years old, and you didn't really have a big emotional feeling about that.
Exactly. The kid could maybe get sad and confused, but the smaller a value is, the less the reaction needs to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like if there is like a big important mentor to you and that person would disappear, then that would make you feel lost and confused. But if some person you've spoken to once or doesn't really add that much guidance in your life and they die, that could be sad, but it wouldn't make you feel lost and confused.
Yeah. Do you remember the 4-step cycle? Would you repeat it?
I'll repeat it. So the first step is your values are being born from a strong emotional experience or many small emotional experiences. Like you said, in the locker room, something was born, but probably it was the emotion I had strong emotions at a lot of times during my childhood and teenage years and whatever about sex that kind of created the same value.
Mm-hmm.
Second part is that the value is guiding me. And it makes me take certain decisions as long as it makes my life better, or at least not significantly worse. It's going to keep doing that. So step 2 for values is that it's guiding me. Step 3 is that it's failing. And it could fail in the sandbox, or it could fail in Los Angeles, or it could fail big and brutal, or just a little bit. And if the value fail, we get to step 4, which is feeling lost and confused. And if the value is not really big, we don't really care. The value is just gone.
You learn quick.
I'm a really smart guy.
Let's move on to the next part of the process.
Okay, so let's go back to Los Angeles. And let's say I'm feeling this lost and unmotivated, and I'm coming to you for help. How would you guide me?
So if I wanted to guide you towards understanding your values, I would first of all assume that you don't know your values, because most people don't know their values.
Okay, I wasn't aware that sex was a value or that it was driving me.
Yeah, exactly.
So how would you do that?
Well, I wouldn't ask you what your values are, because so many of us would just say values that sound cool, like philanthropy or bravery or knightlyhood.
Knightlyhood. Yeah, I wonder what I would have said. I don't know, maybe adventure.
Exactly.
I have no idea what I would have said was my value at the time.
Exactly. So maybe you think adventure is your value because you went on this trip to Los Angeles. But then I want to know, first of all, what actions have you taken? So I might ask you, what actions have you taken in the last 6 months?
Which basically, what have I done in the last 6 months? And I would explain, I broke up with my girlfriend. I went to Los Angeles. I met these pickup people. And I probably tell you a bunch of other stuff I did as well.
All right. So it might sound like adventure is the value here. But after that, I would start asking you the same question that the kids in the sandbox ask grown-ups all the time. Why? Like, why are you doing this? Like, why did you leave your girlfriend? Why did you go to Los Angeles?
Yeah, and if I dared to be honest, and I was honest with myself, I would start talking about sex and why I felt captive in my relationship.
Yeah, and this would, of course, be a long coaching process where I would ask you a lot of questions. But the more we can understand your story and maybe even get to that story from the locker room, the more we can understand that, the value that is actually guiding here is that you think sex will make your life better. It's not necessarily adventure that is guiding you.
Yeah, so you might need to ask the question why a lot of times.
Exactly.
To get to that point.
But at least now you know why you have been doing what you're doing and you're aware of your value.
So would this work in any other situation as well? Let's say I'm coming to you and I just feel, in general, unexcited about life and I don't really think that it's fun.
Yeah, definitely. I would have a similar process. I would assume that you don't really know your values. And I would start asking you, okay, what have you been doing lately? And why have you been doing the things that you have been doing?
Okay, so I start telling you about my work and what I'm doing for a living, or if I like it or not. I talk about my relationship. I talk about, I don't know, my hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
And you would then do the same thing, asking me, why am I working there, for example?
Exactly.
Okay. And what would you be looking for?
So I would be looking for why you're at the job. Because let's say you're at a job that it's okay, but you don't really like it or feel alive.
Yeah.
Then you might think that your value is being smart or being a good provider for your family or whatever it could be. Yeah. But if I dig deeper and we start to uncovering maybe a bit more of your past and why you're making decisions the way you do, we might discover that you're staying at this job because you are valuing the money that you earn so you can buy status symbols that will make you feel important.
Okay, so the value has nothing really to do with the job in that case. It's about me feeling important.
Exactly. And that might be a deep reason for why you need to feel important. Or it could be that you really value comfort and safety. So that is more important for you as a value than it is to feel alive.
Okay, so I would stay in a job that I don't like because it's less scary than trying something else.
Definitely. And none of us would admit that these are actually the values that guide our lives because it doesn't sound good. So instead we rationalize and come up with logical reasons for why we do the things we do.
Okay, and so one reason to be in a job you don't like could be comfort and safety. Another one could be status and money. And there could probably be a third, or fourth, or fifth, or 100th
Definitely.
reasons as well.
That is why the why is more important than what you do, which is much more important than what you say.
Yeah, and the why you get from starting at what you do.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so would you guide someone like me who've had this very strong fail in the same way as you would guide someone who had this other fail?
It's a bit different because there are two ways a value can fail. A value can fail fast and intensely,
Okay.
like it did with you in Los Angeles, or a value can fail slowly. And ironically is that the faster value failed, generally, the better. So what happened to you in Los Angeles was a good thing.
It's a good thing?
Yeah, because you quickly got the awareness that this value is not going to make your life better, and it gave you an opportunity to change.
Okay, so it was easier for me to see what was the enemy. I knew why I went here,
Exactly.
or kind of knew why I went there, and I could see that it didn't work.
Exactly, because the value failed so spectacularly, and the emotions were so strong and so confusing, you knew that you had to change. What's even worse are values that fail slow. That could be a value that just makes your life, 2% worse every year. And you don't ever get to realize that, oh, this value is actually making my life a little bit worse all the time. And you might die with that value and rationalize saying, oh, but life gets a little bit worse when I get older, or whatever it is.
Okay, so what's an example of a value that fails slowly?
A big one that I encounter often is comfort.
Okay.
And comfort is fine to have in your life if it's for a day or an hour or a couple of days. But if you keep valuing comfort over a long period of time, that is going to start having negative consequences.
Okay, so that's what happens if you stay in a job for a long time. Like, it's okay to stay 1 year because of comfort, but if it gets 5% worse after 1 year and you stay another year and it gets 5% worse, and you stay another year and it gets 5% worse.
Exactly.
And 10 years in, you feel really bored and you don't really know what happened because you've just been on that road.
Exactly. Same thing happens in relationships. If your value is comfort, then you might not be willing to be honest with your partner or have a difficult conversation. And as a result, you guys just end up having a little bit more conflict each year, building a little bit more resentment, losing a little bit of the love. And then you're going to have a 40 or 50 or 60-year crisis where you end up saying, damn, I'm 40 now and I don't like my job and I don't like my relationship. And you haven't understood that, it's a value you have that's been failing you, but it's failing so slow.
Okay, so if I'm valuing comfort, I might give a white lie instead of telling the truth about whatever in a relationship, which takes away a little bit of the connection and the honesty in the relationship. And if I keep doing these things over a long period of time, I might end up with a 40 or 50 or 60-year crisis. And is that then because that's like a big birthday, so you kind of get to evaluate, am I where I thought I would be when I'm turned 40? Or, okay, so when I'm failing fast, I get a big punch in the stomach, kind of, because, okay, this really didn't work.
Yeah.
And then if I turn 40, it's like, okay, I'm really not where I wanted to be. And it just matters because that's big age kind of thing.
Exactly. So turning 40 could be one of those times where
it becomes a punch in the stomach because you're reflecting and saying, am I where I thought I would be when I turned 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever?
Yeah, and what happens when people go and travel for 6 months to find themselves, whether that is, going to Los Angeles or going to a monastery in Nepal, what they're saying is, I need to find new values because the ones I had are not working for me anymore.
But they're not aware of that they're looking for values. They just realize something isn't working. I'm lost, confused, unmotivated.
Exactly. And they're in step 4 of the value cycle. And either that confusion came intensely, like a value that failed fast, or it just builds up over time until you realize it. Damn, it's unbearable the way I feel about my life. And then you do a change.
Or try to change at least.
Yeah. A big part of my job as a coach is to help people fail faster.
Fail faster. Okay, so how do you do that?
I do it by helping them see the long-term consequences of their choices and their values they're living today.
Okay, what could that be?
It could be within health. I had one coaching client that was making a lot of health choices based on comfort. And then he had a granddad that had made similar choices within health based on comfort. And now when his granddad was 70, 80, he had all of these health problems, like different types of diseases, and it was massively affecting his life negatively. And my coaching client could see the connection on, this is the trajectory I'm going in my life. And the values I have today around health are actually failing me massively. But he could discover that 30 years in advance.
Okay, so you helped him to see his granddad and kind of connect the dots. So instead of, if he would have kept with the same health choices, he would need to live until that failure.
Exactly.
And you helped him to fail faster by helping him see the future failure.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You could have done the same thing if we spoke about this in Los Angeles, you could have kind of highlighted how these guys were feeling and like make me think more about that. Okay, probably not going to make me happy by failing faster and seeing what it would lead to.
Yeah, you could have come to me before you went to Los Angeles and we could have talked about it and I could have helped you see the long-term consequences of
whatever
living out this value.
Oh, that's interesting. I would never listen to you anyway. So it's
No.
a good thing that coaching client listened. Well, let's hope he did.
Sometimes I can inspire people via stories, but other times you just need those emotional experiences to create strong values.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say I'm either in a situation where I come from Los Angeles and I have failed fast and hard, or I'm in a situation where I'm currently failing slowly. I'm not really excited about things, but I don't really know why. Either way, I would want to find new values, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so how would I do that?
Well, we said in the first topic that you can't choose your values from a leadership list. So that is true because you need the emotional experience for a value to start to stick. But you can get out there and start having new experiences that will create emotions. And you can choose which values you want to try and experiment with.
Okay, can you give an example?
Right. So one value that is important for me is contribution. I have experienced that contribution and helping others is making my life better. My self-esteem goes up and I feel better about me and the world. So maybe you want to try a new value and I say, hey, how about you try contribution? And then I would ask you, okay, what are some ways you can imagine that you can contribute and make other people's lives better?
Okay, probably good to start with simple things. Maybe I say, okay, I want to get better at calling my older relatives and just check in with them, or give money to charity, or involve myself in some different charity project, or involve myself in a sports club and help out, I don't know, kids who want to learn some sport.
Exactly. And when you do that, you will start having emotional experiences. And if they make your life better, you will go into the second step of the cycle and keep repeating it. And hopefully that will be a value that gets built into your life forever.
Okay, so I can't just pick contribution in a list and say, hey, this is not something I'm going to like. But by creating a list of what does it mean, and actually doing those things, I will get either emotional experience that says this is good and I should do this, or emotional experience that says, no, this is bad, I shouldn't do this.
Yeah, it could be for you, but it could also not be your thing. But what I would say is when you try a new value, try to stick with it for at least a month or have a couple of experiences with it. Because the first time I tried contribution, I was thinking, okay, I want to help other people somehow. I was maybe in my early 20s. And I went to a men's hotline in Stockholm where you receive calls from men who have different problems with maybe depression or alcoholism. And unfortunately, I had a quite bad personal experience with one of the people that was working there. And that created a negative emotional experience for me. And I didn't try contribution again for years after that, only based on that experience. And if I just would have tried some other things, I would have had different
Okay,
experiences.
so your first experience created a negative value towards contribution.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's not going to make my life better. Let's do something else.
Yeah, and
Let's
looking
try
back,
more sex.
yeah, exactly. Heroin. No, and looking back, I can see that I was mainly just unlucky that I had that encounter.
Okay, so let's say I want to try some other value then. Let's say I Google, I find a list, and I like the word bravery. I want to be a brave person. How would I do that?
Awesome. I would say, okay, take a look at your life and see where in your life are you acting brave and where in your life are you not acting brave.
What could be a situation like that I'm not acting brave?
It could be, let's say you're single then and you want to meet someone. And okay, the last time I saw a woman that I felt I was interested in and I felt an attraction, what did I do? And you can even ask yourself, the next time I'm in this situation, what would a brave person do?
Okay, so a brave person would go up and say hi. A less brave person would stare when they're not seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And if you choose not to go up and say hi, when you say your value is bravery, what actually happening is that your value is probably comfort.
Yeah, that's true. It's more comfortable to just look when she's not seeing. It's definitely more comfortable than dealing with those tough emotions.
Exactly.
Okay, so if I want to embody bravery, then I would need to go up and speak to her, for example, or I would need to, I don't know, try bungee jumping and whatever, create that identity for myself. And once again, for a month or something then, and ask myself, what would a brave person do in this situation? And then simply do it.
Exactly. And stick with it for a while. Because if you choose bravery, it might be uncomfortable at first. If you choose health, it might take more energy than it gives, start going to the gym. If it is take care of my finances, saving money might be boring at first, but it gives you more freedom later.
Okay, so yeah, like you went with contribution and you had a first negative experience of the health line. If you pick bravery and the first thing you do is to go up to a cute guy or girl and they shoot you down, you're going to have like a negative experience about bravery.
Exactly.
Okay, so you need to stick to it for some time.
So what are some great values someone could try on from your point of view?
Well, let's get to that in the last topic.
In the last? Do I have to wait?
Yeah, you have to wait, but we'll get to it. But patience is a good value.
Damn it. So what happened in your story?
Patience is a good value. We'll get to it in topic 5.
Okay. So let's go to topic 4 first then. I was around 25 years old and I was driving down my garage late at night. And I couldn't stop staring at the person in the passenger seat because she was wearing a sparkly dress and she was smelling good. I was on a date. And then all of a sudden I heard this sound like...
Oh, that's not a good sound.
And I said, that was my thought. This is not a good sound. And I stepped out of the car and realized that I had taken a curve too narrowly and scratched up the front and the back door of my entire car.
That's the nightmare of driving in garages.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I felt nothing. I was just blank and said, well, I scratched my car and then I moved on as if nothing had happened.
So you just stepped back into the car and drove onwards?
Yeah, in my mind, let's continue the date.
What did she say?
She looked at... I remember we stepped out of the car and she just looked at me with skeptical eyes and was like,
she was probably
what is wrong with you?
She was probably thinking, oh, fuck, the night is ruined, and was expecting you to get really angry.
Yeah, but I didn't have any emotional reaction.
So what did she say?
She's just like, so what is wrong with you? Why aren't you more upset?
Well, I can imagine. I mean, I can see that if someone has a very different emotional reaction from what you expect, that is really weird.
And a warning sign.
Yeah, especially if you're on a date.
Yeah, like, I didn't realize that.
So then what happened? Why didn't you have a strong reaction?
Well, I had, for years up to that point, practiced emotional numbness.
What's emotional numbness?
Feeling less.
Why?
Well, as you know, I started playing professional poker when I was young. I was 16 when I started playing and played full-time when I was 18. And I was so in love and obsessed with this game that I would just play all the time, and I quickly got better and I started making a lot of money from it.
Okay.
When I was 19, I had already made over $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah, like imagine how much money that was for a 19-year-old.
That's a lot of money for anyone.
Yeah.
Crazy money for
and
a
especially when
19-year-old.
you were 19, like most people didn't even have
$20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in my reality, it was and in everyone's reality, it was this small fortune I had built up.
Yeah.
But then I entered my first big downswing.
What does that mean?
In poker, there's a lot of luck involved. So sometimes you
obviously.
can do the correct play and you do everything right, but still you lose because you are unfortunate.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the game. And you can go for long periods of time where you're just unlucky over and over and over. And that's extremely hard emotionally. And because it's so hard emotionally, you also start playing worse, which then makes the downswing even deeper. And you start losing more and more money.
Because you lose money and you get pissed off and angry, and so you do a stupid decision and play more, maybe play drunk.
So many mices
Computer mice.
in my first years of playing.
I can imagine. So how much did you lose?
Well, I had to watch in a 3 months period my 100,000 shrinking to 80, 60, 40. I was down to 20,000.
Okay, so how did you deal with this?
I mean, 20,000 is still a lot of money. But at that point, I was panicking. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My breath was going like... I was convinced I would lose everything. And I couldn't understand how I could just keep losing and losing. I hadn't had any of those downswing experiences before. I remember one time I was out in the forest here in Stockholm where we live, and there was tears coming through my eyes, and I was like punching on trees, just trying to get aggressions out. And I was feeling so like hopeless and desperate, and I was completely lonely as well. Like, no one around me was going through anything like even remotely close to that.
Okay, and you were 19 years old and had no idea how to deal with this.
No idea.
And
no one to ask for advice.
So you basically reached the conclusion that I don't want to feel.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, it was so hard to keep my head cool when I was playing. Like, I would look myself in the mirror before a session and say, no, it's going to be different. And then the first thing that happened is that I would lose a big pot. And then I would just my whole body would just be overcome with fear and aggression. And at that point, I couldn't play good poker anymore. So I felt these emotions have to stop. They are in the way of me being able to turn this around.
Okay, so you wanted to get rid of all the bad emotions.
Exactly. Yeah.
How would you do that?
I practiced ignoring. Whenever I felt bad, I would just focus my attention out of that feeling and into strategy. And one thing I did, I would stop celebrating when I was winning. So when I won a hand, I was intentionally like, no, let's not celebrate this. Because if I'm happy when things are going well, I will be more unhappy when I'm losing.
Okay, so you even practice turning off the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this followed you outside of poker. Like the car thing happened, 5-6 years later?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what happens after 5-6 years of practicing turning off your emotions. You don't even care when your car crashes.
Exactly. So I've just practiced over and over and over again to only focus on the strategy and my decisions. And everything outside of that, I wanted to be emotionally neutral too. So if something went bad, didn't matter. If something went good, didn't matter. And when I was driving down my garage in my poker brain, I was like, well, like
that's happened.
I should pay more attention next time. And that's it.
Okay, so did this make you a better poker player?
Definitely. It helped me turn the downswing around, and it helped me become way more logical at the poker tables. Okay,
so let's look at this from the lens of values then. So values are born from emotional experience and serve as tries to guide us to a better life. So you first had this very strong emotional experiences with a lot of pain losing
Definitely.
money, and you felt that it causes you to be a worse poker player. And being a poker player was probably your strongest value at the time, or a very strong value.
Definitely.
So you practiced to turning off the values because not the values, the emotions. Your value basically become emotions are bad, you could say, probably.
Feeling less is
better.
Making my life better.
Yeah, feeling less is making my life better. So you practice that by ignoring bad feelings and good feelings to basically get numb.
Definitely, yeah.
And it made you into a better poker player. So in step 2 here, you actually got a better life from doing this.
And it continued being better over many years.
Yeah, so poker got better, and with that you felt life was getting better because you won more money, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so did this value fail you, or do you still have this value?
Do you sense a fail is coming?
Kind of see there is a direction in that.
Yeah, it failed in some obvious way and then some more interesting ways.
Okay.
So one way it failed is when I lost my connection to my feelings, I started having a much harder time being guided by the rest of my values. So for example, I was sitting in real bad posture for 12 hours per day playing, and there was a lot of pain signals coming from my body saying that this is not good for you, this is making your life worse. But I was ignoring those pain signals for many years, and I ended up with a spine injury that I'm dealing with today, like 12 years later.
Okay, so because you turned off like the feeling of not wanting to feel losses or not wanting to feel wins, you also kind of numbed your physical feelings of pain.
Yeah.
And stopped listening to those signals.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's an example of something that fails very slowly because you probably didn't get that much more pain every day.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Now, 10 years later, you're still dealing with it because at some point it failed hard.
Yeah, and when you're young, you're invincible as well, right? So this was just like removing health from my body a little bit all the time. And then, bam, all of a sudden I was in pain, and it came quick, but it had built up for many years, making my life a little bit worse, but I didn't notice, and I didn't pay attention to the signals.
Yeah, and here some physio or someone could have told you, like, this is going to cause a lot of problem and could have helped you to fail faster, but you never saw someone.
I would have loved that.
So you didn't fail faster. Okay, was it some other way that it failed?
I would say the biggest one was in my relationship, because I was in a relationship with a lovely woman for 6 years. And I can see looking back that there was a lot of signs our relationship didn't work so well. We had a lot of more arguments. We felt less love for each other. We had less and less things in common. We had problems with our communication. And the things, I didn't notice any of those signals. So she ended up breaking up with me. And when that happened, I was just confused and surprised because I didn't see it happen. I didn't see any of the signals that something was wrong here.
Okay, so you might have drifted apart for years. She might have maybe been really disappointed in you and you didn't even notice, or maybe she surprised you and you didn't get that happy.
Exactly.
So there were all of these situations where you didn't give her the kind of emotional response that would have been normal, and you didn't realize that wasn't normal. So she could say that we've been drifting apart for years, and you wouldn't have realized at all.
Exactly. So there was a lot of probably small values that were failing all the time. Like my values for how to have conversations with her was failing. My values for how to show appreciation for her was failing. But since I didn't have access to the signal, my values couldn't guide me because I had shut off the emotions. I didn't notice that I had a lot of small failing, not so small, but a lot of failing values all the time.
So basically, you could look at this and say that if you are turning off emotions, either to this extreme, like you're saying here, like you have actively tried to turn off your emotions.
Yeah.
But a less extreme part of that could be to play a lot of video games and distract yourself from your feelings, or drink alcohol, or even do too much exercise to kind of run away from feelings. And what you might end up doing then is to lose connection with your values and lose connection with your inner compass then, because that's how the compass works. It guides us with emotions. So if we're not willing to feel them, then that puts us in a tricky situation.
Yeah. And I would say I was quite lucky with this because I failed this rather fast. Because when my body started breaking down, when she left me, I had a wake-up call that, fuck, this value of feeling less is actually not making my life better at all.
Yeah.
I had a big fail. I got into confusion and I took a year off to do life philosophy, which was really just finding a new value. And if I didn't have those experiences, I might have shut my emotions down, 5% per year. And then I'm 40 and I feel numb and I have no idea why.
Yes, if she would have stayed with you for another 5 years, you might have gotten even better at not feeling anything.
Definitely.
And then maybe when she left, she wouldn't even have felt that.
When she left, it felt like the worst thing that had ever happened to me. But looking back, I can see that wake-up call was so useful for me.
Okay, so let's sum this up a little bit. Values are born from emotional experiences and tries to guide us to a better life.
Yeah.
And they do that by giving us emotions and thoughts. And if we turn off our emotions, either actively or passively, we will struggle to find that compass and we will feel numb and probably unmotivated as well then, because we do not really know where we're going. And it's really hard to find where we're going if we're not feeling it. And you went through this journey, getting the emotional experience from losing money, and then it serves you for a while, and then it fails you, both in slow ways and in fast ways.
Yeah.
And your way of dealing with it then was to turn off poker for a while and go experience life.
Yeah.
What else did you do?
Look for new values. My biggest realization from this was that the more difficult emotions of life, the pain, the worry, the anxiety, they are a way for our values to try to guide us towards a better life. And
so anxiety is a good thing?
It can be, yeah.
It can be a good thing. It can be our values telling us that, hey, you should look into this.
Yeah, like anxiety can come from many different sources, but often it's valid. It means that we are doing something that our values say is not going to make our lives better. And that's them trying to guide us. And if you shut off the difficult emotions, you're not going to feel the good ones equally strong, but you're also going to lose contact with your values' ability to guide you.
Can you give an example when anxiety is a good thing?
Right. So let's say that I eat a lot of ice cream before going to bed. And I wake up the next morning and I feel sluggish. And then I start having anxiety. Oh man, I'm going to have this important meeting today. I'm not going to have energy and blah, blah, blah. It's tempting to want that anxiety to go away. But what it's trying to communicate is your evening habits are not making your life better. You need to change something here.
Okay, so it's good to listen to that anxiety and realize, okay, I'm feeling bad because I didn't do good things last night, either physically or for that matter with my time. And that anxiety is a signal that I'm not living up to my value of taking life seriously or this business meeting seriously that's going to happen and whatever. Exactly. And if I turn off that anxiety and try to ignore it, I'm going to do the same mistake again. But if I listen to that feeling, it's going to teach me like, hey, Erik, it's time to take a walk instead and get more aligned with who you want to be.
That would be an excellent use of that anxiety. And if you wake up and have anxiety and the first thing you do is to scroll your phone to get a dopamine kick, then you miss the important information that anxiety has to give you.
Okay, so we learned here that negative feelings or painful experiences like anxiety or sadness or guilt could actually be good signals that are coming from our values and us not living in alignment with our values. And it's our inner compass trying to guide us to a better life. And if we shut them off, it means that we're not listening to our compass. And if we distract ourselves from those feelings, we might miss out on very important information from our own bodies trying to guide us. Okay, so let's move on to the last topic and look into what happened after Los Angeles, what happens after your breakup, and what are some of the most beneficial values to live by for us. So values are born from emotional experience and tries to guide us to a better life. I find it interesting that both you and I have had strong values that have tried to guide us to better lives that worked in some part, but then failed brutally. Do you think that's common?
I think it's very common. I think most of us have values we are totally unaware of, that we would never admit, that we might even feel shameful over, but that are secretly running our lives. And it's so important to become more aware of them.
So we spoke about failing fast, and with that way kind of failing big, I would say. And we spoke about failing slow. What way do you think is the most common that fails for people?
I think the failing fast is more common, because then it's more likely that you change your value. The slow failing values are so tricky, because I think so many people are dying with those values.
Okay, so it could be that it's a lot more people are slowly failing, but they never really realize it. So from the ones that actually make changes, it's usually when you have failed fast. That's when the big thing have happened. While it's common to stay with a slow fail for a very long time, and it might end up with a divorce or a crisis when you're 40, 50, 60 or whatever.
And that's when you're lucky, because that is when you realize your value has failed. Yeah. The worst thing could be to be in an unhappy marriage for your entire life and die there.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why it's so important to be aware of how the cycle of how a life cycle of a value works, so you can know when it's happening and start to change it. So let's repeat what happened in your story.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be aware of that. Okay, so take my story. Step 1, an emotional experience that creates, or a value is being born. And this could be the locker room case. It was probably 100 different situations for me growing up where this value was created and reinforced. But the locker room one was a very significant one. Second step here is a value is guiding me. So it was guiding me to take all kinds of decisions in my teenage years. I was maybe actually going up to that cute girl in the street because of that value. That was more important than comfort for me. Or I went to that party or whatever it did. A lot of times this made my life better. I got up on stage and spoke in front of people because I wanted to impress someone or whatever that might be. And then in the third step, the value failed. It didn't bring as much good things in my life as I was giving up other good things for. I think that's a crucial way to realize here. Yeah. Maybe it made my life better, but not to the extent that it was worth giving up the love of my life and go through all of that pain and all those things. So the value was too big of a value. Sex still makes my life better, but not to the extent of giving up everything else. And then I entered into step 4, which is just feeling lost and confused.
So then what happened from there? How did your values change after this whole experience?
So for me, what was important, okay, I need to figure this out. One thing I realized was I really want to be with Johanna. I really want to live my life with her. And I don't know how that should work out. I realized that I didn't use the word value, but I had a very strong value that I want to be with her, that she is important. So it's just a question, how do I figure that out? And I'd say a value that was born in me through that emotional experience was, I have to figure this out. That was kind of the value. There is a way. There gotta be a way. And that value started guiding me towards new experiences or new mentors and new books and different retreats. Like the value become to search for an answer at that time. And we got back together, and it took quite some time for us to find connection points where it actually started to feel like things were getting better. But through different, we went to couples therapy, we read books, we spoke to other people that were older than us that had been dealing with sexual challenges. And we got a lot of help from that. But I think what was even more crucial for me was that I learned how meaningful it could be to just talk to her about the real pain. Now, that was something that I hadn't really done before. I hadn't talked to her how painful I felt that it was that sex didn't work. And I had been hiding that emotion from her, in some ways from myself and from the world. So I felt much more alive just starting to open up that box. And somewhere there, I got emotional experience that supported, okay, Erik, your life gets better when you talk about the painful things in life. Your life gets better when you dare to show your insecurities to the world. So a value was born through that experience that now allows me to sit and talk to thousands of people about me having a tiny dick, a story that I haven't told anyone. I had a tiny dick. It's big now. Important. And I think all of that comes through that experience. I got a much stronger connection with her thanks to being able to talk about all the pain points. And over the period of a few years, we have opened up all the different secrets and all the different conflicts and whatever, and really talked about those. And now one of my absolute strongest values is deep human connection with her and with everyone who means a lot to me. And that, in another way, it connects to another very strong value that I didn't have back then, but I have now, which is honesty. Like, I want to be completely honest with her about things that hurts and about things that happens. And I want to be vulnerable, meaning that I want to talk about emotions and weaknesses from myself. I don't want to hide them. I don't want to act cooler than I am. I want to give her all the information and other people all the information. And through these principles and values that I've come up with over the last few years, which have been through different therapy, different retreat, different experiences. I've tried all kinds of things. I haven't actively looked for values. It's first now when we actually plan this podcast episode that I can connect the dots backwards. Okay, it was values that I was looking for. I was looking for something. I found values. I was just looking for something. So yeah, that was the experience that today I'm with her again. We have a child together. Our relationship is better than ever in pretty much every regard. And I have a lot of values that relates to her and our family now.
That's a really cool journey.
It's a bumpy ride.
It's a bumpy ride. So maybe what you were looking for from the beginning was human connection, that you wanted to be seen and appreciated by people around you in the locker room. You thought it was about sex, but maybe it was connection from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, the value actually hadn't changed. I had misinterpreted the value. Exactly. I thought sex was the good thing, but all I wanted was appreciation. And sex just happened to be the vehicle for that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Like, often we might have the same value. We just think there is a different way of going there. And there are tons of different ways of going there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did things unfold for you?
Right. So if we look at my value cycle, first I had a very strong negative emotional experience from having this first downswing. And it created a value that if I feel less, I will be better at poker, which will make my life better. And this value started guiding me. And as it guided me, my life became better. I turned the downswing around, I started winning again, and I became a better poker player. In the third step, my value failed me, especially hard when my girlfriend left me. And I was left in stage 4 of the value cycle, confused and feeling like I need to change something. This value is not making my life better anymore. And I can see, like with you, life is not very straight lines. Like, I took a year off doing life philosophy, and during that period, I tried a lot of different things. I went to therapy, I was writing, I was doing meditation, I was doing reading and retreats and all kinds of stuff, just trying to understand myself better. And the big shift after that was that I really started to believe in the value that feeling more is making my life better.
Okay, so you shifted that completely.
Yeah, that was a complete shift.
If I had the same kind of value of human connection, which took its path in sex, would you say that turning off your emotions for poker, did that in some way align with any other value you have today?
Yeah, definitely. One of my stronger values today is progression.
Okay.
I love getting a little bit better each day. So that is a value that I could live out fully in poker.
Yeah.
And I can see that I did shut off my emotions to be able to progress better.
If it's healthy to become a little bit better all the time, that's probably a good thing, but not on the expense of turning off emotions, for example. Then
Exactly.
turning off emotions is the unhealthy way of doing this.
Yeah, and now I want to get a little bit better each day in how I live my life, handle my relationships, and most importantly, the relationship I have to myself, my thoughts and my feelings. And that requires emotional sensitivity. It requires to be in deep human contact with other people, but more importantly, myself.
So what's your relationship to negative feelings today, like painful experiences?
All emotions are like guests that are inside of my house, and I try to treat them all equally. I might not like disappointment, anxiety, frustration, but I know it's there for a valid purpose, and I treat it with kindness, and I try to understand what message it has for me.
What does that mean, treating with kindness? If you're feeling anxiety, what do you do that then?
Right. So I think many of us feel anxiety and say, either wish it wasn't there, or said, no, I shouldn't feel this way, or start scrolling Instagram to distract ourselves. And again, imagine that emotion was a guest in your house. That would be like slamming the door in the face of it, right?
Yeah.
Kindness would be like, okay, anxiety, I might not like how you feel. You might not be the favorite guest in my house, but since you're here, I will be nice with you. I will speak to you with a kind voice. I will try to understand what you need to feel better, and I will welcome you. I will have a dialogue with you. So if I feel anxiety, I'm having a dialogue with that emotion. I'm not ignoring it.
Okay. So strong value today is to feel as much as possible, opposite to feeling as little as possible. And you have that value because now you feel that your life gets better the more you feel.
Exactly. And I have used my progression in the way I deal with my emotions. So now I feel like I have learned enough tools to be able to get useful information out of the negative experiences as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
So what do you think are some good values that someone can start experimenting with?
So I like what you said earlier about contribution being a good value to kind of start with, because it's easy to try it out. How would that feel? I think honesty is another one that it's pretty easy to try. Well, it's not easy. It's really hard to be very honest, but you can quite quickly get feedback and you know what honesty would be. Like, how can I be more honest in my relationships and everywhere in my life? I like bravery as well, that we talked about before as well. Like, how can I try to actually act more bravely? That could be apply for that job rather than choosing comfort. That could be talk to that person. It could be leave that relationship if you actually want to do that. Or it could also be like try a new activity, try dancing, try a new sport, whatever. I think all of those are fairly easy to try, and you will get quick feedback if this is actually making my life better. And personally, I believe that everyone's lives would benefit from having more contribution, more honesty, and more bravery.
Mm.
What are some values you would add?
I think fun is a very underestimated value.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So I think so many of us value progression and think that we can progress without fun. But when you start to think long term, you understand that if things are not fun, you're not going to continue.
No.
And then everything will break down. And speaking of that, long-term thinking is another really good value. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the episode we did before this, number 86, about long-term thinking.
Yeah, that's another good value. Like being willing to, a lot of the things we say here is actually about long-term thinking, like bravery. Yeah. It's going to take some long-term thinking to embrace that value. Honesty, same thing. Contribution, maybe same thing. So if someone were just to look at one value and they want to know if this is likely to be a beneficial value or not beneficial value, what are some elements to that?
Right. The first question I would ask is this value making my and other people's lives better? That's a good place to start. And I would also ask a second question, which is this value in my control?
What do you mean?
So if your value is, I want people to like me, that's a value that is going to create a lot of frustration for you because you can't make everyone like you. And it's not up to you if they're going to like you. You're just naturally going to have chemistry with some people and some people you're not. So if that's what you're going for, and this might not be an consciously chosen value, but I think a lot of people are making a lot of decisions based on the value, I want people to like me.
Probably everyone has that value to some extent.
To some extent, yeah. But it's not a useful value because not all people will like you. A better value would be, I would like a value to be my authentic self, and those who will like me will like me.
Yeah. Okay, so try out new values, try values that you are in full control over and that you believe is adding value to your life and to the lives of others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we talked in the beginning of this episode, the first thing we said, that we got an email from a fan and they asked, why aren't you releasing more episodes? And we said, we're acting on our values. What is the logic behind that?
Yeah, so one of our values about this podcast is that we want to learn as much as possible. We're doing this as much for our own sake as we're doing this for, well, you listening's sake. Unfortunately, we care a lot about ourselves. And with that, it's more important for us to spend a lot of time learning about a topic like values. That's a really complicated topic.
Yeah.
So we want to spend lots of time learning about it for it to be meaningful, to explore what does this mean. And we want to give away something that we're really proud of. Like there are millions of podcasts out there with people who take a shallow conversation and haven't really thought through what they're doing. And then you can easily make an episode per week or one per day. But our value here has been that we want to learn as much as possible. And we want to put something out there in the world that no one else puts out there. So that's like why we're doing this podcast the way we're doing and why we have more fun doing it, why we feel prouder about it. And yeah, in so many ways, it makes our life better. Like the values that we apply in this podcast guides us towards a better life, especially compared to how we used to do it. Even though if one of the expenses of that is that we're only putting out an episode every 2 months or something like that compared to every week. So how does someone know if they have good or bad values?
I think that's a very important question. And we touched on it earlier in this episode. If you feel good about your life in general, if you're happy with the way your life is, and it's a good life, then your values are generally doing a good job guiding you. If your life is not working and you don't feel good in your life, then the values you have or the values you're unaware of that you have are not doing a very good life to guide you. And it would be beneficial for you to spend some time doing life philosophy, trying to discover those values. And you can do that by paying more attention to your feelings, even the difficult ones. You can do it by start journaling and start to discover why you're acting the way you do. Or you can go to a therapist or a coach that can help you ask questions so you can discover why you have the values that you do.
So when you say life philosophy, you basically mean think about life.
Exactly.
And see who you are. Okay, so if your life doesn't feel good, it's likely that you have values that doesn't serve you. If your life does feel good, it's likely that you have values that do serve you. And if your life is somewhere in between, it's likely that you would benefit from knowing your values better because it would make your life better.
Yeah, and even if your life feel good, it can still be a good thing to think about your values because who knows, maybe you could feel even better. Yeah. So what is some last piece of value you have for our listeners today?
So last piece of value that I want to give before I go is make sure that you spend time to make your life better. And you can do that by listening to our podcast or to reading books, listening to books, and just getting more information into your life. And do this when you're on a train or when you're driving or when you're on a boat or a plane. If you're going to work or to school, don't waste that time. Instead, use it to get smarter. And we have done 80-something episodes now. So if you haven't listened to the back catalog of our episodes, then please check those out because there is a lot of value in there. Is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, I would start with episode 85 about confidence, because the ideas we talk about there goes quite well hand in hand with how you can discover your values.
Yeah, definitely. And if someone wants to help us, what can they do?
The most helpful thing they could do would be to press subscribe, either on YouTube or in your podcast app. Because if you do, that is showing the algorithms that this is an important conversation. So we can rise in top lists, so more people can be recommended this content, so they can start thinking more about their values, change their life for the better, and therefore improve the world.
So if you have the value of contribution, a tiny way to try it is to like this podcast and subscribe to it.
And it will give us a lot of inspiration to keep putting this much effort into planning. And share ideas with you that will make your life better.
Thanks for today.
And thank you, Erik.
Thank you.